would you do if you're on your way to school one morning and the car in front of you veered off the road and ran to the guardrail? Would you provide help? My name is Katie Esvelt, and I have been an EMT for the Stevens County Sheriff's Ambulance for 3 years now. Today I'm going to be talking about first aid. The topics I'm going to include in my speech are Good Samaritan laws, what to tell dispatch when calling in an emergency, how to hold C-spine in suspicion of a spinal injury, and how to treat severe bleeding. According to the book, What You Need to Know When Called Upon to Be a Good Samaritan by Robert Dax, the Good Samaritan laws are legal protection for people who want to provide care in the case of an emergency. It is intended to reduce hesitation for somebody in an emergency to provide care to a stranger. In the case of somebody who is unconscious, there is a topic called implied consent, which means that if the person were conscious, they would give you consent to provide them care in case of an emergency. If you come upon an emergency where somebody is conscious, you need to ask permission to provide first aid before providing first aid to somebody in the field. In any case, do not leave the person after you have initiated care. It is not common knowledge that in case of an emergency, you are not required by law to call 911 or provide care to somebody in the field. But if you do decide to provide protection or care to somebody in the field, you need to know that you need to stay with that person until help arrives. Remember to keep it simple and be safe. When calling dispatch, there are 5 things you need to remember. Give detailed instructions on how to get to your location. Tell dispatch how many people are involved in the emergency. Also tell dispatch what the main injury or illness is to the victim. Next, if it is possible, send somebody out to a common location or an area where an ambulance can easily see this person to guide the ambulance into your emergency situation. Next, do not hang up on dispatch until dispatch informs you to do so. According to the book, First Aid to the Injured, Nursing and Bandaging by Ganguly, they request that if in case of a spinal injury, to hold manual C-spine on a victim until help arrives. This includes putting a hand on either side of the head to help the victim keep their neck and their back in alignment until help arrives in case of a spinal injury. Next, if providing care for somebody in seizure, one would make sure that you do not stick anything in the person's mouth. Secondly, move any objects or furniture out of their way so they will not run into it, especially with their head. Next, stay with the person until help arrives. Next, we will talk about severe bleeding. In case of a severe bleeding, one needs to put sterile bandaging onto the arm. In any common first aid kit they can get, there should be sterile dressings that are inside of a sterile package. Apply the sterile dressings to the area. Provide pressure for at least 5 minutes. If there is bleeding through your sterile dressings, add more dressings onto the area and provide pressure. Next, you can wrap the area with something such as roller gauze. This is also in most first aid kits, but might be in a smaller version, about half the size. Remember that for severe bleeding, we need to provide pressure. So when adding the bandage on top of the gauze, make sure that it is tight, but not too tight so that the victim cannot feel their fingers. If you feel any numbness or tingling in the appendage beyond the bandage, make sure that you loosen the bandage. When applying the roller gauze, you wrap until the wound is fully covered. You can start from the furthest part of the extremity away from the core and move your way in. Start from the outside, moving in slowly, applying pressure as you go. If there is not enough pressure applied, one can take the roller gauze and flip it upside down over the top of the area that is bleeding in order to provide a knot over the top of the bleeding area to provide more pressure. Keep applying the roller gauze and tuck in the end as needed. Thank you for your time. This is some basic first aid, and I sure hope that next time, if you ever see an emergency, you will provide care. Thank you for your time.